All right, now for the last section of this chapter. Solving inequalities in one variable. So we're going to learn about polynomial inequalities and rational inequalities. What does rational mean? It's a what? Fraction. There you go. So polynomial inequalities, you're going to either be greater than or less than. If you're less than, you're negative. Greater than, you're positive. So let's look at this one. Okay. This is how we are going to solve these. Yes, if you look at this, you got to figure out where this hits where the zeros are, basically. So you set it equals 0, and you figure out x equals -3 and x equals +4 are zeros. Then you draw a number line. Okay, so maybe 4 is here, 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2, -3, -4. Okay, so we want to know, okay, from here, let's just say that this x plus 3 times x minus 4 is less than or equal to 0. We want to know, where is this negative at? Okay, where is this negative squared? Okay, so what we do is use test numbers. Like I have a test number of -4 out here. If I put a -4 in here, it makes it negative. If I put a -4 in here, it makes it -8, but -4 squared is positive. So that'll be positive. What's a negative times a positive? So we're going to be negative over here. Okay? Then in between here, the easiest number to check is 0 there. So if I stick 0 in here, we get a +3 and a -4, but a negative squared is a positive. Positive times positive is a positive. It'll be positive here. If we go over to 5 here, okay, if we put in a 5, we'll be positive here and positive here. Positive times positive is a positive. So where is it negative? Well, it's just negative from here on over, okay? So it'd be negative from -infinity all the way up to -3. We're using interval notation, okay? Oops, my mistake here. I need a bracket because we're less than or equal to. If it was just less than, we'd use a parenthesis. Less than or equal to, we use a bracket. Now, if I'm wondering if where it's greater than or equal to, okay, or maybe I'm just wondering where it's greater than. If we're talking about just greater than, here's my number line. Get rid of this for a second. All right. So let's say we were told that, hide you, x plus 3 times x minus 4 squared is greater than 0. Then we'd have open circles here and here at -3 and 4. Okay? And it's still going to be negative, positive, positive. So it's going to be positive in between here and positive past here. So where is it greater than? Well, it's greater than from -3 up to 4, parenthesis, in union from 4 to infinity, parenthesis. So when it's greater than or less than, you have to use parentheses. And because there's a hole in the graph right here, you have to say that there's a hole there by going up to 4 and then from 4 on, but it doesn't include 4. Okay? So that's the basics of that. And they talk about that there. Okay? They say do this graphically, so they get out the graphing calculator, put everything to one side, and then they graph it, and it crosses at 3 places, and some of the places are decimals. So then the decimals are 0.32, 1.46, and 4.21. So where is this less than? Where is this below the x-axis, in other words? Well, from -infinity up to 0.32 right there. And then from the next point, 1.46 up to 4.21. And use brackets because it's less than or equal to, because that's the equal to part. Okay? So if you're told to use a graphing calculator, that's what you do. Now, if you have one of these, okay? So you make your number line, and you're going to put it 3 places. Okay, let's say that it's less than or equal to 0. Well, my roots are -3, 5, and then you have to find this one too, which would be 2/5. So -3, and then 2/5, and 5. Now you'd have a filled in circle here, and a filled in circle here, because it's less than or equal to, it has an equal to part. But because this is in the denominator, pay attention to this, those of you who aren't paying attention now, because it's in the denominator, you need an open circle here. Okay? Because even if you put the number in, it cannot equal 0. So you have to have an open circle there. And then you check numbers. So then, let's do our check numbers. Okay? Let's try -4. -4 makes this a negative, makes this a negative, and would make this a negative. A negative times a negative is a positive, over a negative is a negative. Then from -3 to negative and to positive 2/5, there's a 0 in between there. So if we check 0, makes this positive, makes this negative, and makes this negative. Positive times negative is a negative over a negative makes a positive. So it's positive in here. So the graph kind of goes like this and like this. So in between 2/5 and 5 is 1. So if we check a 1, makes this positive, makes this negative, and makes this positive. So then it's negative in here. And then after 5, if we try a 6, makes this positive, positive, positive. Positive times positive, positive, divided by positive is a positive 2. So that's positive over there. So it goes like that. That's basically what happens to the graph. We're wondering where it is less than or equal to 0. Well, it goes from -infinity to -3 in union with, -3 is a bracket, in union with 2/5 not using a bracket to 5 using a bracket. Okay, so you understand where the brackets come from versus the parentheses. Parentheses are open circles, or if there's not an equal to there, brackets are where it is equal to. All right, so if you have a denominator, it's always going to be an open circle. Okay, so you have all those things going on. All right, let's look at very quickly. One note, PreCalc 2.8. What you're going to see. So what they're going to do to you is this. And this didn't look like the problems I was doing. But what makes this 0? Well, a -4, a -3, and a +1 makes this 0. -4, -3, +1. So where is it positive? Well, using our sign chart, we are at -4, -3, and a +1. If we go -5, makes this negative, 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 so we're negative here. And then it's going to cross, and it's going to be positive in between these two. Then it's going to be negative, then it's going to be positive. Just trust me. You can actually check the numbers, but it's going to be negative, then positive, then negative, then positive. Okay? And anytime there's not a double root, it should cross. Okay? So where is it negative? Well, from -infinity to -4, or x is less than or equal to -4, or less than -4, and then in between -3 and 1. So it's A. Where, that's negative, that's positive. I want to go negative. So there's the negative ones. The positive ones are in between 4 and 3 and past 1. So there's that. Okay, so that's how you'll answer the first couple. You'll just draw sign charts. And here, when you have a double root, it's not going to cross there, so you got to be a little more careful there. Be careful in checking your numbers. Okay? So the intervals here. So what happens here is your roots are -6 and 8. So on your number line, you're -6 and you're at 8. So from -infinity to -6, you have to figure out what's going on. From -6 to 8, you have to figure out what's going on. And from 8 to infinity, you have to figure out what's going on. Okay? So if you try -10 in here, a negative times a positive is a negative. If you try 0 in here, a positive times a negative squared is a positive. So it's positive here. If you try 10, whoops, it's a positive times a positive, which is positive as well. Okay? So, wow, this moved on me. Go up, right there. Okay, so the sign of the interval is negative, positive, and positive. So find the solution set for where it's positive. Well, your solution set goes from, since there's an open circle here and an open circle here, goes from interval notation -6 to 8 in union with 8 to infinity. Okay. All right. So you'll have some of the same where you have to figure out where they're at. Let's look at this one. What causes this to be 0? Well, if x is 0, it'd make it 0. And if x was -9, it would make it 0. Okay, so these are the two answers for this one. What would cause it to be undefined? Well, this in here makes something undefined when that is what? Positive or negative? Negative. So if it's less than -9, that would make it undefined. What values make it positive? Well, here's our sine curve again. So we got -9 and we got 0. So anything less than -9 is undefined, so we don't even have to check that. So if we check like -1 in here, -1 times a